Before Christianity and even before ancient Greece, there was Egypt. This was one of the earliest civilizations we know of today, and their culture was rich in knowledge, ancient sciences, and mystic spirituality. The Egyptians were wise beyond measure, for it is here we find some of the earliest forms of mathematics, botany, theology, civilized government, geometry, astronomy, astrology, accounting, and even medicine. It is not known today precisely how these people advanced so far and so fast. Many today believe that it was simply a time of unparalleled innovation, where others insist, just as the Egyptian writings themselves declared, that they received the knowledge from those who excelled beyond themselves, from a long, distant past. One of the most unique aspects of ancient Egyptian culture was that of the mystery schools. For more than 3,000 years, the mystery schools of Egypt epitomized the ultimate in secret wisdom and knowledge. These were some of the earliest forms of organized spirituality, but they were not like our religions are today. These sacred schools were designed for the initiates to elevate their consciousness and move into higher dimensions of life experience in order to become guides for the rest of humanity. The mysteries were passed down throughout history and eventually became known far and wide in different forms across that part of the world, from Persia to India. It was in 500 BC that a man named Pythagoras traveled from his homeland to Egypt and applied to join the Egyptian mysteries. Time and time again, he was turned away. He was told that unless he completed a 40-day meditation of fasting while practicing a specific breathing technique, he would not be allowed to enter. When he completed this trial, he arrived at the temple gates and spoke, "You are not allowing Pythagoras in. I am a different man. I am reborn. You were right and I was wrong, because then my whole standpoint was intellectual. Through this purification, my center of being has changed. Before this training, I could only understand through the intellect, through the head. Now I can feel. Now truth is not a concept to me, but a life." Pythagoras spent many years learning from the Egyptians, and it wasn't until about 36 years later that he returned to his homeland of Samos, where he established a new mystery school of his own, modeled after his experiences in Egypt. At the entrance of his temple, there was a statue of Hermes Trismegistus, the Greek version of the Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth, with an inscription on the pedestal that read, "Let no profane enter here." The mysteries exploded in popularity across the Greco-Roman Empire over the next 500 years, which we can see in the writings of many ancient philosophers today. In Phaedrus, Plato wrote, "We beheld the beatific visions and were initiated into the mystery which may be truly called blessed, celebrated by us in a state of innocence. We beheld calm, happy, simple, eternal visions, resplendent in pure light." The mysteries were a safe and sacred space, a place where people were transformed from being ordinary people to enlightened and awakened beings, instruments of transformation and elevation for all of humanity. So then, what happened to them? Where are they today? It is in ancient Greece that we find the transition from the mysteries to what we know today as modern-day religion.
Many of the words which we use in the modern day are derived from far more ancient sources than most would imagine. Many of the words that we use for objects and activities, which have been around since time immemorial, have their named origins placed near the birth of some of the earliest civilizations to have ever walked upon our planet. As such, if beings such as giants did once exist on Earth, one would not only expect to find enormous unexplained ruins, but also these lexical inspirations given to the activities undertaken by these huge people. Is it then just a mere coincidence that ancient, enormous stone walls are often named Cyclopean? Cyclops having once been an ancient one-eyed giant within ancient Greek and Roman mythology. Is it also but a mere coincidence that the giant found within biblical stories named Goliath was also a one-eyed beast? Was the name given to these enormous ruins a clue to their original builders? A clue left upon spoken language, a remnant far more difficult to erase from history than any physical remains. Found everywhere on Earth, and even dotting some of the most remote tropical islands, these Cyclopean ruins still perplex us to this day. Many of the ancient Cyclopean ruins that can be found within developed areas have often been draped with modern architecture. Many suspect that this is often done in an attempt to conceal the true nature of these sites. Italy is a particularly good example of a country drenched in Cyclopean architecture, yet chooses to overlook such wonders in favor of modern development. Scattered throughout ancient Latinium, and yet again, coincidentally, placed at the location of a later, flourishing civilization, and actually the first real modern world superpower, Rome, are ruins undoubtedly left by an as yet not publicly disclosed or studied branch of ancient beings who were capable of feats we are yet to unravel. Many classical writers and historians, including Homer, Hesiod, Plutarch, Thucydides, and Diodorus Siculus, among others, posited the idea that the Cyclopean ruins of Italy and others within Europe were erected by this now extinct Cyclopean race. And we seemingly continue to carry this torch. For to heavily research not only these particular areas of ancient architecture, but the many individuals who have made remarkable discoveries over the years, along with reels of newspaper archives with an interest in these particular finds, and also the suspected individuals tasked with the possible concealment of such. The proposition of an unknown ancient race of controversial beings, possibly much larger than modern humans, having once existed on our planet, has become overwhelming. Why are ancient ruins, seemingly built by a race of giants, actually named after giants? A name with origins placed far within our distant past. Did an ancient race of giants once build the countless unexplained ruins found on virtually every continent? We find the evidence within some areas to suggest such overwhelming. We have in the past covered the remarkable legends, and in particular, the intriguing enormous tombs which cover the Mediterranean island of Sardinia. Long claimed as the resting places of some 800 or so ancient giants who once belonged to a now lost race of beings, it is undeniable that the scale of these inner chambers is of considerable size, most capable of housing remains of a size of 15 feet or more in height. There are, undeniably, many compelling pieces of written reports, and indeed photographic evidence of the discovery of ancient giant remains. Yet nearly all seemingly vanish into thin air, many shortly following the mention of the involvement of certain academic institutions, such as the claimed 3,000 or so remains claimed to have been excavated by Ralph Glidden on Santa Catalina Island, located within the Channel Islands during the early 20th century, all of which now lost. However, like the many ancient ooparts we share, there are that rare few which have fortunately made their way into the hands of private collectors or individuals lacking any agenda but that of revealing the truth of these objects' existence. And one such scenario involves that of a Luigi Muscus, a man who actually owns farmland on the island of Sardinia, upon which he claims to have found gigantic molars of a hominid appearance. In tandem with her appearance on the program Coast to Coast AM in the US, Paola Harris shared his extraordinary photos. After looking into the artifacts ourselves, we have indeed found an argument which will undoubtedly be used to dismiss the finds as that of ancient cave bear teeth, yet the root patterning and indeed crown of the molar, like that of the partial jaw also shared, seem to us to be more reminiscent of giant human skulls rather than the patterning of prehistoric bears. What's more, it must not be ignored that surrounding the claimed discovery site are indeed the aforementioned and gigantic ruins, and the legends of individuals large enough to have once housed such teeth in their mouths, which all persist on the island to this day. What do you think? An ancient giant's molar and lower jaw? Or simply that of the remains of a prehistoric animal? It is a legend and indeed series of discoveries which we find highly compelling. Again, in regards to this fascinating subject, we must remark upon the outstanding work of William R. Corliss and his collecting of remarkable tales of ancient giants, but what's more, his general conclusive consensus, and in which, due to our own research, we also share. For example, he mentions on page 102 of his sourcebook Strange Artifacts that, quote, "The ancient people of most countries seem to have possessed in the strongest degree a faith of giantology," end quote. A feeling we also share, having validated our suspicions. He goes on to mention a tale of the astonishing size of the statues, said to have represented the beings who once dwelled within the true ancient Egypt. Quote, "In front of the portals of the palace of Karnak are gigantic human statues, and in one of the courts are 12 immense stone figures, each 52 feet high. The adjacent palace of Luxor has 2 granite statues 38 feet high at the entrance. In the ruins near Thebes are 3 huge figures, now thrown down, one being 64 feet high, and in the palace of Parthenon of Athens, many years before Christ, was a statue of Minerva 36 feet high. The Temple of Olympia contained a seated statue of a god who rose almost to the ceiling, which would have made it some 68 feet high." End quote. He mentions that entering these places gives one the impression that they are entering the past dwelling place of giants. Yet, what he goes on to say was found is astounding. Gaius Plinius Secundus, called Pliny the Elder, was a Roman author, naturalist, and natural philosopher, and naval and army commander of the early Roman Empire, and a friend of the Emperor Vespasian. He wrote the Encyclopedic Naturalis Historia, which became an editorial model for encyclopedias. He states that after an earthquake in a Crete mountain, witnessed the complete intact remains of an ancient giant some 46 cubits long, or 60 to 70 feet tall. Beings of this scale would easily explain how such enormous stones were moved, yet how they could have been hidden from history is an unknown motive, which we find highly compelling.